What's your sense of this bill? Does it go far enough?
Yes, I think it would be a huge step forward. Of course, there is a lot more that we are hoping can happen in the future, but being able to stop the anti-competitive discrimination that these companies are engaging in to prevent small competitors from getting a fair shot would make a huge difference towards promoting competition and making sure that consumers actually have access to the best products.
Adam, would you agree, or does this bill go too far?
Respectfully disagree. I have great respect for Charlotte, but we disagree on this one. Look, I think this bill is languishing for a pretty simple reason, which is that what it's proposing to do just isn't that popular. If you look at another space, which is drugs right now, in contrast, Congress is on the verge of passing an extremely popular regulatory change over the objections of the pharmaceutical industry, which is allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices. That's something that voters have been clamoring for decades. It hits their pocketbooks. They've asked senators about it at town hall meetings. Tech regulation isn't like that. I think we see that polls show that the public favors regulation of big tech platforms in general, but this bill does something in particular that's not particularly popular, which is ban big tech from offering vertically integrated services like Google Maps, Amazon Basics. And it's always been clear why smaller companies like Yelp and Spotify and Match would benefit from that law. But I think senators have sort of seen for themselves over the last couple of months that no voters are really marching on Washington to demand big changes to Google search results or Amazon Prime, and that's just the reality.
Charlotte, how do you respond to that?
So I think it may not be yet a household discussion about competition and antitrust, but I think what people notice is that these products are not serving them. They might not know that that is because of a lack of competition, because these gatekeepers don't have to face the new entrepreneurs who sometimes have better ideas. And that's why we're stuck with the same old products. So I think, people are learning, and that's part of the effort of advocacy for this legislation. People are learning what the root cause is and that it's a lack of competition. But I think people are very familiar with the results of that lack of competition because they see it every day in these products that are no longer innovating in the way that we really should see in this space.
Adam, we've seen big tech kind of stepping up its efforts to lobby lawmakers. As this bill inches closer, you've got Amazon News Today hiring a top Republican congressional aide on its lobbying side. You have Apple spending more on antitrust lobbying than ever so far this year, and Tim Cook himself personally going to Washington. Just how scared is big tech of this particular bill?
Well, it's not something they love. And I think, again, there's a pretty simple reason, which is that if you look at the number of people in this country who are happy and satisfied with their iPhone, with their Google search results, with Amazon, we're talking about hundreds of millions of people. And I do think there is something about politics that sort of rewards, kind of the vocal activist few over the kind of the happy many. And I think that's one of the dynamics of this debate, that there's a lot of people who are not paying attention to this debate at all, but who I think would be pretty upset if those products change. And so I think in some ways, the companies are kind of in this position, and it's awkward, but they're in this position. Of course, they're defending themselves, but they're also defending sort of their happy customers at the same time.
What do you make of that argument, Charlotte, that, supporters of big tech or, regular people maybe actually wouldn't want these things to be happening if they understood what is, to be fair, a very complicated set of issues?
Right. I don't think that's right. I think the reason that the tech companies don't like this legislation is that it's much easier for them if they don't have to face fair competition. Right now, they can rest on their laurels and they can use anti-competitive tools to prevent competition from getting a fair shot against them. And that is a lot easier for them. I understand that. But I think consumers really would be better served by fair competition and by making sure that those alternatives that are out there, or in some cases, are unable to get funded, making sure that those alternatives actually get a chance to thrive. I think consumers will really benefit from those new innovations that we would see if there was fair competition in this space.
On that note, I'm curious what you both think of the FTC challenging Meta's attempts to buy this VR company Within Unlimited. It sounds like Lina Khan moved forward with this challenge despite her staff recommending against it. Adam, is this, the FTC trying to prevent Facebook/Meta from resting on its laurels and not innovating and trying to innovate by buying instead of building?
Look, I think the case is more rooted in politics than the law. As you said, her staff attorneys recommended against this case. And this is coming on a week, right, where Meta, actually their revenue was down. I think everybody knows that they're facing pretty existential competition from TikTok, right? And so I think one of the things you see in this new case is that the FTC had to draw a very narrow market definition in order to make this argument that that Meta was monopolizing. They said that Meta was monopolizing what they called the market for VR fitness apps, right? And they did something similar in their VR dedicated fitness apps. They did something similar in their case against Meta over the Instagram and WhatsApp deals. And the judge in that case said that they had failed to prove the market definition. I think in this case, I predict the judge is going to say they drew the market too narrowly. It's a little bit like saying that like Fruit Loops has monopolized, the market for rainbow-colored fruity cereal. Well, that's not its own market, right? It competes against Fruity Pebbles and Frosted Flakes and Lucky Charms and bagels and English muffins, and judges know that, right? And so I think this case is I think likely to fall into a similar trap of defining a market too narrowly.
Charlotte, what do you think about this FTC challenge? It certainly has a ring of some skeptics who think maybe the Instagram and WhatsApp deals should never have happened.
So first, I really don't think we should read too much into this idea that the staff were overruled. I worked at the FTC. I know that there are usually many staff involved in an investigation like this. I think it's not at all clear from these unofficial leaks, what the view of the staff was. And there's a lot of staff with their name on this complaint. So I think they stand behind it. And I think it's a strong argument. I'm so glad to see that the FTC is not waiting to see, not letting this one go by as they have so many times before. I imagine, 10 years from now, maybe we'll be so glad that this was the merger where the FTC decided to step in. It is a situation of uncertainty, and part of what I think is really needed to improve antitrust enforcement today is bringing those cases in situations of uncertainty, especially in tech markets. We're not always going to be completely sure. But what economists have seen is that the prior strategy of wait and see and not bringing a case in situations of uncertainty really led to so many more mergers going through than should have. And the economic theory that new competitors were going to come in and compete away those monopoly rents just wasn't right. That's not what happened. It turns out that the costs of inaction are much higher than the costs of action. So I think they're absolutely making the right decision here, and I was glad to see it.
Interesting. Now, there are some potential big concessions that big tech could make. And we have seen some concessions over the last several weeks, potentially to divert the spotlight. But one of those, Adam, is Google potentially offering to spin off its ad business to fend off antitrust scrutiny. How likely is that?
I don't know how likely that is. I think one of the things that this has come up is in this context of this DOJ investigation, supposedly, of Google's ad tech business. One of the things that's interesting to me about that is that the Texas Attorney General already has a lawsuit that is pretty advanced against Google over the same topic. And so it's interesting to me to see that kind of happening in parallel. I don't know what to make in terms of kind of how that will unfold, but we'll see if the DOJ takes that step, given that the Texas AG is prosecuting. Sometimes enforcers say, well, that's an issue that another enforcement agency is already tackling, so we'll, maybe we focus on some other issue in our investigations.